Ever pondered over how tourism impacts the economy of a region or a nation? Well, it's a question that demands careful thought and analysis. You see, tourism can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can stimulate economic growth, create job opportunities, and promote cultural exchange. But on the flip side, it can also lead to environmental degradation, cultural erosion, and economic disparity. Understanding these economic impacts, both positive and negative, at regional and national levels is paramount. It helps policymakers, businesses, and even tourists themselves to make informed decisions. That's where economic analysis comes into play. It's a tool that helps measure these impacts, giving us a clearer picture of the ripple effects of tourism. But what exactly is economic analysis? How does it work? And what are these direct, indirect, and induced effects we often hear about? Hold on to that curiosity as we delve deeper into these economic impacts and their measurements. What comes to mind when you think about the economic impacts of tourism? Economic impacts are, quite simply, the changes in the economic structure of a region or nation that result from tourism. Sounds simple enough, right? But there's a lot more to it than that. To truly understand these impacts, we need to delve into their characteristics. Now, picture a scale. On one side, we have the positive impacts. These are the benefits that tourism brings to an economy. For instance, it generates revenue and jobs, stimulates the local economy, and leads to infrastructure development. It's like the sunshine on a perfect beach day. On the other side of the scale, we have the negative impacts. And just like a sudden storm can ruin that perfect beach day, these impacts can cast a shadow over the benefits. They include things like inflation, increased cost of living, and overdependence on tourism as a primary income source. But it's not all doom and gloom. The balance between these two sides is what truly defines the economic impacts of tourism. It's about how well an economy can maximize the positive impacts while minimizing the negatives. This balance is crucial in ensuring the sustainability of tourism as an economic activity. To keep the scale from tipping too far to one side, it's important to consider the distribution of these impacts. Who actually benefits from the tourism revenue? Is it the big businesses, or does some of it trickle down to the local community? And what about the negative impacts? Who bears the brunt of the inflation and increased cost of living? These are the characteristics that shape the economic impacts of tourism. They are the factors that determine whether tourism is a boon or a bane for an economy. It's a complex interplay of benefits and drawbacks, of revenue and costs, of people and places. Now that we've got a hang of the characteristics, let's move on to the types of economic analyses. Are all economic impacts created equal? This rhetorical question paves the way for us to delve into the different types of economic analysis. Economic analysis is a systematic approach to discerning the optimum use of scarce resources, involving comparison of two or more alternatives in achieving a specific objective under the given assumptions and constraints. Let's start with cost-benefit analysis. This is a method of assessing a project or investment by comparing the benefits it will bring against the costs it will incur. It's like a weighing scale, weighing the pros and cons, the pluses and minuses, the benefits and costs. But remember, it's not just about the financial costs and benefits, it also considers factors such as environmental impact, social consequences, and other indirect effects. This makes cost-benefit analysis a comprehensive tool in economic decision-making. Next, we have the multiplier effect analysis. This is the ripple effect that an investment or spending has on the economy. Picture throwing a stone into a pond. The initial splash is the direct impact, but the ripples that spread out are the indirect effects. In economics, the multiplier effect measures these ripples, quantifying how an initial expenditure leads to increased economic activity and greater income and job creation. Lastly, let's talk about impact analysis. This is the assessment of the positive and negative effects of a policy, project, or decision. It's like a report card showing the successes and failures, the gains and losses. Impact analysis helps decision-makers understand the potential consequences of their actions, ensuring they make informed choices that maximize benefits and minimize harm. These types of economic analysis, cost-benefit analysis, multiplier effect analysis, and impact analysis, are invaluable tools in understanding the economic impacts of tourism. They provide a framework for assessing the direct and indirect effects, the visible and hidden costs, the short-term gains and long-term consequences. Understanding these types of analysis gives us a clear picture of the economic impacts of tourism. How does tourism impact a region economically? Let's dive into the regional impacts of tourism and see how this industry can be both a boon and a bane. At first glance, tourism might seem like a golden goose for a region. It often leads to economic development, as money flows into local businesses and municipalities. Hotels, restaurants, and attractions bloom, providing a wealth of opportunities for entrepreneurs. Tourism can also be a major job creator. From hotel staff to tour guides, from restaurant workers to souvenir sellers, the industry can provide a significant boost to regional employment. In fact, tourism has been credited with revitalizing areas that were previously struggling economically. Revenue, too, sees a surge, not just from tourists spending their money on local goods and services, but also through taxation. Local governments can use this revenue to improve infrastructure, fund public services, and further develop the region, creating a virtuous cycle of growth. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are potential negative impacts as well. For instance, a sudden influx of tourists can lead to inflation, driving up the cost of living for local residents. Goods and services that were once affordable can suddenly become out of reach for the local population. Overdependence on tourism can also be a problem. If a region's economy becomes too reliant on the tourism industry, it can be vulnerable to fluctuations in tourist numbers. A natural disaster, political instability, or even a global health crisis can lead to a sudden drop in visitors, causing economic hardship for the region. Let's not forget about the potential for cultural erosion either. As regions cater to tourist demands, they may lose their unique character and charm, becoming homogenized and indistinguishable from other tourist destinations. Regionally, tourism can be a double-edged sword, bringing both benefits and challenges. It's important to manage these impacts carefully to ensure that tourism supports sustainable development and benefits the local community as a whole. Now let's zoom out and consider the national impacts of tourism. Tourism, on a national scale, is often seen as a golden goose, contributing substantially to a country's gross domestic product or GDP. It's like a generous relative who never comes empty-handed. Every tourist stepping into a country brings in foreign currency, contributing to the country's foreign exchange earnings. This inflow of foreign currency is especially important for countries with limited natural resources or manufacturing capabilities. But just like that relative, tourism can also have its quirks. For instance, the infrastructure development required for tourism often leads to a boost in other sectors. Highways, airports, hotels, restaurants, these developments not only cater to tourists but also improve the quality of life for the local population. However, this development must be sustainable and considerate of the local environment and culture to avoid negative impacts. But wait, there's a flip side to this coin. An over-reliance on tourism can lead to economic instability. Imagine a scenario where a country depends heavily on its tourism sector. Now let's say a global event occurs, a financial crisis, a pandemic, or even just a bad press, causing a sharp decline in tourist arrivals. The result? The country's economy takes a nosedive. Furthermore, let's not forget the phenomenon of leakages. This occurs when the revenue generated from tourism is not retained within the country, but instead leaks out to other countries. For instance, a significant portion of the revenue might go to international hotel chains or airlines rather than contributing to the local economy. So, while tourism can bring prosperity and development, it is crucial for countries to strike a balance. It's about leveraging the benefits while mitigating the risks, ensuring that the country's economic health is not solely dependent on the whims and fancies of international travelers. On a national level, tourism has the power to significantly shape a country's economic landscape. And just like any powerful tool, it must be used wisely and responsibly. We've traveled through a lot of economic terrain today, haven't we? We've explored the diverse economic impacts of tourism, both positive and negative, and how these ripple effects are felt at regional and national levels. We've dissected the characteristics of these impacts, shedding light on their direct, indirect, and induced effects and the inevitable leakages that occur. We've also delved into the types of economic analysis that are used to measure these impacts. We've seen how these tools help us gain a nuanced understanding of the economic footprint of tourism. It's clear that such analyses are not just academic exercises, but essential instruments for policymaking and planning. In essence, we've learned that understanding the economic impacts of tourism is not just about numbers and charts. It's about making informed decisions and shaping a sustainable future for tourism. Remember, understanding the economic impacts of tourism helps us make informed decisions and shape a sustainable future for tourism.